Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Aaron B. And we got a great show for y'all today. We're going to be talking about our selectively aggressive Cowboys. And I got my special guest, photo journalist for KIII News in Corpus Christi, Texas, and writer for the Landry Hat, Maitland Rutledge. How's it going, Maitland?
It's going good, Aaron. How are you doing on this Tuesday, day two of free agency, really, or at least tampering?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of watching everybody get the toy they always wanted, but we're getting socks and everything else that we don't want. But it it's been it's better than last year when we were quote unquote all in, where we were just waiting for them just to even sign one guy. We got four guys this time. We're gonna talk about that, but I know you definitely got something to say about some of the signings they got. But the biggest thing yesterday is Jordan Lewis went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it was for actually a good contract. He wanted to get paid. He's almost 30. I think he's getting signed for 3 years for $30 million, which is well deserved for what he did for the Cowboys. He was always consistent, and we needed him to play outside. He played outside, but his bread and butter was in the nickel. But what was your thoughts on about Jordan Lewis going to the Jaguars?
It's a big loss. Like you said, Lewis has been kind of really a staple of the Dak Prescott era Cowboys. If you really look at it, he was drafted in 2017. That was the year after Dak and Zeke were rookies, and I felt that Jordan Lewis was a good pick for being a day two selection. And when he came to the Cowboys, even as a rookie, he made plays, he stepped up, and he earned a second contract. And then, there came some of the extensions with a couple of, quick years, on the contracts. And he earned it every time. I don't recall a season where Lewis just didn't make any plays where you just felt that, like, wow, he is one of the best players on this defense. I mean, last year, the splash play for me was the interception on Jalen McMillan in the Buccaneers game. That had touchdown pass written all over it. That's a touchdown. It's only a 2-point game. And instead, Jordan Lewis robs McMillan of that football. And he was always a very aggressive type of corner. He would just want to get his hands on the ball no matter what it took. And you really need that sometimes, especially in the slot when you're going up against some guys that got, speed. You want to, jam them a little bit. And another thing I liked about Lewis is that he wasn't afraid to kind of be a little bit brash at times. After the Steelers game, he was talking about Pickens a little bit, I believe. And, I don't see a problem with that, because if you need to give your team a shot in the arm, sometimes that's what you have to do. But yeah, Lewis is a big loss, mainly because of where he played. I mean, whenever you thought about, slot corner for the Cowboys the last few years, you always went in saying, like, well, if we've got Lewis, we've got that locked down. Now Dallas doesn't. You may have Deron Bland and Trayvon Diggs next year, even though Diggs will miss likely the first bit of the season with that injury he had last year. But still, slot corner, nickel, that's a big need that Dallas created for themselves on the yesterday on the first day of free agency. So it's a big loss.
Yeah, it really is. And when you think about Matt Eberflus's defense, he plays a lot at a nickel, and he always wants to have a really good nickel. And I was like, before the free agency, I was like, okay, they're gonna try to get Jordan Lewis signed and everything. And then when you see he's gonna sign with the Jacksonville Jaguars, like, dang, now you just put another loss on this team that we need to fill needs. And you can't just nickel and dime every position on here and having just getting some random UDFA or some guy that's barely played. Maybe he had a really good year a few years ago. No, you got to have a good quality nickel, and nickels are not gonna they're not gonna be nickel and dime. No pun intended. You got to spend money to have a good quality secondary. Yes, you did good when you re-signed Wanye Thomas and Marquise Bell. So your safeties were secure. You could have your own opinion about Donovan Wilson and Malik Hooker, but you're in a better situation than you were if you were without the other guys behind them. But this team is looking at maybe have to sign a corner and also draft one in the early rounds, which we're going to talk about. Is do you believe that this team needs to draft a corner, maybe first round, maybe second, or maybe third? Or what do you think would be the best time to sign or draft one?
I've been thinking about that, and sometimes, one of the things that we do, of course, Aaron, as observers and fans, writers, podcasters, bloggers, is that we're always looking to see what's next. It's what's the next shoe to drop, and I think other than really running back as maybe a potential early pick for the Cowboys in the early rounds, a corner just shot up to arguably the guy that the position that you need to fill because. Um,
Yeah.
uh, the, some of the corners last year did some things. I thought Josh Butler had a pretty good standout season considering where he started his NFL career and where it's ended up to now with being a guy that's going to be here next year. But then again, he fell victim to the injury bug last year as well.
Mhm.
And Kalen Carson, unfortunately, whenever I watched him, he did not look like he knew what he was doing out there as a rookie. I'll be honest. But there's growth there. But yes, I definitely feel that the Cowboys cannot, based on what they've already done in free agency, to show that they're doing things. Number one, first and foremost, that's kind of a big deal if you ask me. That I don't think they're done. I hope they're not done in free agency yet, and they'll at least
I
sign
hope
one
not.
corner yeah, exactly, who they think can at least fill nickel slot role for Jordan Lewis. And yes, I do think that if the right player falls to you at number 12, or even in the second round, I do think that you should really look at corner. Mostly because this is a very deep class of running backs. So you can wait a round or two and get somebody to pair with newly signed Javonte Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could look at there's a couple of corners that come to mind. One corner that comes to my mind, but I know they weren't too hot on him when he was in the draft a couple years ago, and that's Asante Samuel. Yes, he doesn't have like all the length and everything, but he's coming off of was kind of a slump year. He had dealt with injuries. That's kind of a green light for Cowboy the Joneses. So maybe you could look at a guy like getting him, Asante Samuel Jr. in there in the building to play some nickel, or he could play outside as well. Maybe not at the same level you got in J. Lou, but it's better than just kind of hoping there'll be a guy that you can get for a nice cheap deal. So they may have to extend that money a little bit. They got over 40 million, so hey, invest into getting a good quality corner in that, and maybe also drafting one as well, just because he's dealt with a lot of injuries last year, like you're saying, Josh Butler, Trayvon Diggs, and others that we were trying to find corners in the practice squad. Like, hey, can you be CB1 because we're running out of guys right now because you can't have too many good corners and getting Asante Samuel Jr.'s and drafting the guy would be definitely a good addition for this team.
And another thing, Aaron, is that I think that the Cowboys really need to do something this offseason. One of the things that I feel like happens is that they never address depth. Like a lot of the signings that we've seen, I don't really see these guys as like instant starters, like they're going to start day one. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But you need depth because this team always seems to get injuries at the worst time. And last year was one of those years at every position. So depth is a big deal, whether it's the draft or free agency. You have to look at depth this offseason.
Yeah, because all these guys that we signed are, like you said, they're all depth guys. Like, I can go into their contracts. We only have one guy that signed for a multi-year contract now is Solomon Thomas, and he plays defensive tackle. He plays five tech as well. So he's kind of, I think where he's in his bread and butter will be being a depth piece behind also Zua during passing down. So we signed him for a 2-year deal for $8 million, but everybody else is on 1-year deals. I think our biggest 1-year deal is Robert Jones, who signed one for 4.5 million. I'm sorry, I didn't really know who the guy was, but kind of watching this film, you've seen there's some potential there, but he's kind of being that role in that interior role, like you've seen with Chuma Doga, but probably at a higher level. And then with Javonte Williams, who in his first couple years he looked really good at maybe like that link between RB1 or RB2. He plays with power. He's good on passing down, and also he's a better pass catcher than Rico Dowdle. But his carries last year were 3.5. I'm kind of always leaning towards running backs that are averaging over 4 yards per carry. But I think Javonte Williams in this offense could, if we can get between that 3.5 to 4 yards a carry, and then getting a complimentary running back, I think that'd be a good plus. And Peyton Turner, when he was in the draft, I heard the Cowboys were leaning toward they were going to draft this guy. I always seen him as more of like a project guy that you would need to develop. He had all the length. He was like 6'6", 280, but he hasn't done really much in this league. And I know they always like those type of guys, and hopefully they pan out. But I think he's just another rotational guy. What do you really think about like Peyton Turner as the guy we signed today?
Mhm. Well, I will say it was a little bit of a surprise because I thought that,
Yeah,
the Cowboys are going to put it to bed for today. But to get Peyton Turner, here's why I liked it. It's because you lost Chauncey Goldstein. He's going to the
yeah,
Giants. Pretty good payday, I'll admit.
yeah.
I was hoping that Goldstein would come back. The biggest play I remember last year was, of all things, an interception he made in the Commanders game on the road. That was a wacky play, but still, you don't see a defensive lineman make an interception too often, but he was a good rotational guy. And based on the injuries this team had all over the defensive line this year, most notably Demarcus Lawrence missing practically the whole season, Goldstein really stepped up. And I think Peyton Turner is basically going to come in and fulfill that role as a rotational guy. And of course, you got your edge rusher and Mike Parsons, of course. So you have that locked down. But who knows what Eberflus is really going to do with Micah? If he wants to move him around a lot, and you need depth on the defensive line. I'm glad that the first couple of days of free agency, with you mentioned Solomon Thomas as well, and you mentioned Peyton Turner. The defensive line was something the Cowboys really needed to address this offseason, free agency or the draft. Quite frankly, a lot of these spots that they're addressing in this offseason so far are spots they should have looked at last year, besides just bringing in Eric Kendricks, who may not even be back this next year because he was only on a 1-year deal. But back to Turner, yeah. I like it for rotational reasons because you got to keep enough bodies on the line due to attrition. And I think Peyton Turner coming in is going to help with that. And it's just about just doing something. You can't go through an entire off season like you did last year, of where you just don't address anything from the moment that you can try to improve your team. You need to show the fans that you're, and try to prove that you want to make the team better. They didn't do any of that last off season. Now, with the restructuring of the contracts of Dak and CD, yes, that helped, but it definitely allowed. But when I saw that, it gave me some hope that maybe they're going to actually do stuff this offseason. So far, they have. I know these are depth guys, but it's better than nothing. But I like Turner and Solomon Thomas. I think the real attraction with keeping Thomas here on a 2-year deal was probably because his former defensive line coach, Aaron Whitehead, comes over, and he's a part of the staff with Eberflus now, and he coached him with the Jets. So, that's a classic deal where when you get your new coaching staff in place, quite naturally, they're going to look at players from their past stops and where they've been and bring them on. And, Eberflus can have some influence. And I think Clayton Adams, the new offensive coordinator, he could have some influence as well on who they bring in for the rest of this free agency period.
Absolutely. And before we go into our next one is I hope they and in these next couple of days they look for a starting linebacker because we don't have DeMarco Overshown. Yeah, he's looking good on the dance floor, but I'm not gonna jump the gun and say he's gonna be a starter linebacker next year because I want him to ease back into that starting role because you got Maris Leaf out. There's a question about Damone Clark and a lot of the other guys are special teams guys. So I wouldn't mind like a guy like Jack Sanborn, who played under Eberflus, or Tyrell Dobson, who played for the Seahawks and the Dolphins. It was excellent in coverage, and I think those contracts and those guys, you're not looking at guys that are going to be over $8 million. They may be between that $4 to $6 million if you play your cards right now and get one of those guys in there and also draft one. And still, corner is a need. But
Hmm.
our next thing is we were just talking about Javonte Williams. Who are like three running backs in this draft that you think would be a good complementary running back next to Williams?
Well, these are some names that maybe the average observer of the draft may not be really too high on, but these are three names that I have. I have Brashard Smith, who is the running back from SMU. I have Raheem Sanders from South Carolina, and I also have Taj Brooks from Texas Tech. And with Sanders and Smith, I feel like those guys, if you draft them and you develop them, you could potentially turn them into they could like overtake the role of being the main starter during the middle part of the season if they are able to develop into what they've seen. And the reason I've said those guys is under the impression that maybe you don't go all in on Ashton Genty in with the 12th overall pick. Basically because of like we talked about the needed cornerback, and there could be some guys there that you could select. And with Taj Brooks, I went to Texas Tech, so I watched plenty of Taj
Yeah,
Brooks film and highlights and everything like that. And the greatest thing that I've seen in him is his just ability to just almost see the play before it happens. I mean, he could stop and pick the hole and find out where to go. And he's a small guy, 5'8", kind of a scat back guy. He was used in the passing game a little bit at Texas Tech, so I feel like that could be a possibility there. And it sounds like that Brian Schottenheimer wants to emphasize running back
yeah,
in this season and also have it be a critical part of the offense. And I really like that. I think any of those three guys that the Cowboys get, maybe even on day two, I think I would be satisfied with that because, like I said, this is a deep class. And if you don't get Genty, it's not the end of the world if you ask me.
yeah.
They can somebody in the later rounds that could become a franchise running back for you. When I say franchise running back, maybe at least carry the load for the next few years because the running game needs to improve. Dak can't do it on his own. It's been proven, and you need to put an emphasis on the running game if you're going to have this offense be successful. But I like any of those three guys.
Yeah, I like those guys that you brought up, and I actually got a list of some guys as well. And I kind of stick to like some of the like you were talking about the scat back type of guys. One guy, I got two guys you could potentially see in the third round due to their bills and stuff. Like RJ Harvey, a lot of people are kind of don't really talk about RJ Harvey until later. He's a guy that's about 5'7", about 200. He's a lower center of gravity guy. He's not afraid to lower the shoulder on somebody when he had to. He has that physicality, but the thing he's a dynamic run. He runs with speed. He can be running the outside and the inside. And I think that'd be a good guy to complement with Javonte Williams. And another guy that I really like out of Tennessee, and that's Dylan Sampson, who ran a sub 4.5 at the combine. Who's I thought was a little taller, but he came out to be 5'8", 200, kind of similar to that Brian Westbrook build type of guy. And he plays with physicality as well. And his production this year was really good. It's just he's under there's like you were saying, there's so much talent at the running back. There's certain guys people don't talk about, like the ones you brought up, because everybody's all Genty, the Ohio State guys, and then everybody else. So I think that would be another good, and both from help out in the passing game as well, because I know they want to get the running backs involved in the passing game as well, and it's good to have that type of running back. And then who I think we get in the second round, a lot of people have been talking about, and that's Travion Henderson, who was
Mhm.
another running back that was a dynamic running back, and also helps in pass blocking. But his main thing, he's actually a really solid route runner when it comes to being a receiver. So I wouldn't mind Travion Henderson like in the 44th overall pick type of guy, because I know Amari Hampton, he's out of the question when it comes to 44th overall. I think you'll see him more in the first round, but like you said, I don't think you should stress out and start panicking. We didn't draft a running back in the first round. There's other needs. I think you could maybe looking at day 3, but that's a little bit pushing it. But I would say in that 44th to 76th round is where you can find a really good running back.
And the good thing is that they did address running back already in free agency with getting somebody who is at least respectable in Javonte Williams. Because last year, arguably, the Cowboys should have addressed running back when Tony Pollard walked away, but they didn't until Royce Freeman and then Zeke. And both of us know how those ended up. But the fact that you've addressed it doesn't make it absolutely 100%. You have to be in on Genty or even Hampton. Believe me, I would love Ashton Genty to be the pick
Yeah.
12th. I mean, I think he would be an every down back. He would be your new Zeke in a way. He's different than Zeke, but in a way of he would be, the next Zeke or DeMarco Murray, somebody that you can hand the ball off and he would carry the offense. But you develop those guys in the later rounds. And I like Sampson as well out of Tennessee. He was another guy that I was thinking about putting on this, but he'd be like, 4th on my list probably. So.
Yeah, any of those guys we just brought up, I would be happy to them to be a part of the Cowboys with Williams. But before we go into our last thing, this little mock draft, I want to show a little love to your article you did. Let me. Okay, here it goes. I know we did get a replacement with Javonte Williams, but there's some guys that maybe will double dip in the free agency to get a running back. But I see you have like a J.K. Dobbins, who I was hoping we get. I know he's dealt with injuries, but when he's healthy, he's balls out. But why would J.K. Dobbins number 1 on your list?
Well, the biggest attraction for me with putting him number 1 is because he's been a starter for pretty much all of his career in the NFL, and he's had success. I've also felt this offseason, like if the Cowboys bring in free agents, I love for them to bring in guys that had success because this team is getting younger. You got guys retiring, you got guys leaving. And I thought if you got J.K. Dobbins, you definitely would not have to worry about addressing running back, maybe even in the first 3 rounds of the draft, because J.K. proved with Baltimore that he was pretty good. And last year with Los Angeles, the Chargers. It was a down year, but the Chargers also run through Justin Herbert. So that offense, I don't think was really catered to J.K. being the main guy, but he still had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. So that was impressive. And like I mentioned in the article, he is a part of the passing game, something that Brian Schottenheimer wants to emphasize with the running backs in this offense. So that's the reason he was number 1, because I felt like he was the top free agent running back that was going to hit the open market. And I mean, he's still out there. Nobody's picked him up yet. That's why I put him number 1.
Okay, and then A.J. Dillon, a guy I know that the Cowboys were talking about last year. Oh, I didn't jump the gun a little bit with your third guy, but what was your why do you have A.J. Dillon as number 2?
Well, the reason I put him in number 2 is because I wanted to kind of put somebody there that I feel like that Dallas would maybe consider more because there were rumors last year that they were looking at possibly bringing him in. Kind of like Dobbins, AJ has an injury history that's more recent now. He didn't even really play last season with the Packers when he re-signed there. And I saw actually reports today that he's about to be medically cleared of the injury that he had last year. So that kind of possibly puts him on the fast track to a team being interested in signing him for whatever it is. And look, this is where Dallas thrives. They thrive on bargain basement shopping, and A.J. Dillon would be a bargain basement shopping deal. That's why I put him there, because of just the interest they had last year, and also the fact that with the injury history and wanting to just get a second chance on a prove-it deal, whether it's a 1 or 2 year deal, A.J. would be probably an easy pickup. They wouldn't have to spend a lot of
money. And I think it'd be a selling point because he used to call him Quadzilla, and he's a physical down runner, and you could use him in short yardage opportunities, because I wouldn't say no to double dipping that running back, like I said. And next guy that I was a fan of when he played for San Francisco, and that's Jeff Wilson. He was in those plethora running backs that they had there, and then he had Miami too.
Man, Miami and
So
San Francisco, they keep stacking up those running backs every year, whether it's the draft or free agency. I guess
yes, really.
McDaniel just loves to have like eight plans A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, whatever. But yeah, the reason I went with Jeff was kind of going back to, like you mentioned, the San Francisco days. That was kind of when he put himself on the map. The other injuries at running back, Mostert was dealing with an injury for pretty much all of 2020, if I recall. So I think that Jeff took advantage of that. And I was just thinking that, he's somebody that I just don't think is really high on a lot of other teams' radars. And I kind of went with the last two guys with that because the Cowboys always go with guys that are not they're not the darlings of free agency. They're not going to go for the big name guys. They're not going to go for the splashes. They go with under the radar guys that nobody's really talking about. And I feel like Jeff Wilson would kind of fit in with that if they really wanted to look at him as being a guy that would not be a starter, but would play the role that Javonte Williams is going to take over now, essentially, and Rico
Yeah, I
Dowdle as
agree. I definitely agree because I know that everybody always has I call it the Cowboy Christmas wish list, and those guys are never the guys they ever sign. It's always maybe once in a blue moon when they can get them on a good deal, they'll be on there. But most of the time, they're gonna get guys that you gotta have to gotta find on YouTube or try to find some type of film. I'm like, oh, okay, I never. Oh, I remember that guy in the draft. It's usually those type of guys. It's not gonna be like, oh, the big name like last year. It's not gonna be the Derrick Henrys of the world or something like that. It's always gonna be a guy that's gonna surprise you, or is gonna be a guy you're like, he did solid for us.
well.
So before I let you go, it's draft season. I know free agent frenzy's going on. We're gonna do like a quick little mock draft. Let me get this going. We're gonna do PF. We're gonna just do 3 rounds and just to see what could we get to help our Dallas Cowboys out. So let me get this going. Here it goes. Let's see. Do 3 rounds. So we're at pick 12. And let's see who gets drafted first. We got Cam Ward. So let's see who got picked up. So Cam Ward with the first overall pick, Travis Hunter, Armand Mimbo from Missouri, Ashton Genty went to the Patriots, Will Campbell went to the Jags, Tyler
hmm
Warren went to the Raiders, and Bill Carter went all the way down to the Jets. I have a couple of Jets friends that'd be excited about that one. Mason
hmm
Graham went to Michigan. Mike Green went to the Saints, and Shamar Stewart went to the Bears. The traits are there, but it's just the production not there for me there. And the 49ers went with Jahad Campbell. And he's on this list, surprisingly. There's a few of them that I see because I'm surprised about the Shamar Stewart one a little bit. I know he had a good thing, but the Giants going with Armand Mimbo kind of surprised me. So that means what's it called? Shador is still available. But is
Oh
there any
no.
other one? I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm
Mhm.
not one of those Cowboy fans that say we need to get rid of Dak and get Shador Sanders.
No.
It's not. It's not one of those type of shows. I
Right.
promise
Yeah. hmm
you. There's so right now on the Cowboys, we're on the clock. So we actually got some good options here. We got Ted McMillan. We could be our wide receiver 2. Jade
hmm
Barron could be our outsider nickel. Or you could go with maybe if you're being a wild card, Malachi Starks, James Pearson, the Pat as a really good edge. Will Johnson could if you wanted to look for a lockdown corner, who's kind of been more his career with the Michigan, kind of like how Derek Stingley when he first got there, he was really good, and then the year he gets in the draft was kind of on the if and then. And Luther Burden, who could be he could play outside or inside. So, is there any of these guys that you're like, okay, needs to be the guy for the Cowboys?
Well, I actually did one of these myself last night, and based on what's there, I actually went with Barron, the corner from Texas, mostly because of I think that corner is just more of a need right now based on the departure of Jordan Lewis. Barron looks like somebody that could come in and could make a difference for this secondary right away, but more so with the Trayvon Diggs injury. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine that on opening day that you have Deron Bland out there and Kalen Carson's the only other option as your starting corner, like the best that you think is out there that's available. You got to give something else. So I think Barron would be, in this scenario, the best option.
Yeah, I wouldn't even be mad at that because you brought up a great point. Like you're gonna have Bland and then Kalen Carson, who didn't have the best year last year, and you're expecting him to like, okay, you're gonna be CB2, so you might well get a Jade Barron. I know he's not the tallest or the biggest guy, but you're gonna have to get past the how long his arms and stuff. If the film shows he's a baller, get the guy that's really who can play outside and inside, which is a good thing to have. He can play some safety as well. He's got the versatility, so I'm definitely down with Jade Barron becoming a Cowboy. So we got him in the first round.
12th overall pick.
The 12th overall. I wouldn't be mad at that at all. And that's coming from a Longhorn fan though, but that's but here's some is there like a certain position in the second round you want to look at? I know there's defensive line, linebacker. I like Demetrius Knight, Jack Beck, and Xavier Watts or some guys. Is there like a certain position you want to look at or you kind of want to look at these top five?
Running back, I think, is something that you have to address. So, considering what's left, there's Cam Skattebo. And looks like Judkins actually slipped.
Yeah.
Did he? Or was that Henderson? Oh, no, Henderson's another one. If it was me in this situation, because I would go with Judkins because I know that Skattebo might be rated higher, but Judkins is a guy that is bigger, of course, and could be he looks like he could be that every down back. And that's what Dallas really needs to find during the rest of this offseason. You can't go with what this running back committee had last year. And I do think Javonte Williams is an upgrade from some of those guys that the team had in training camp last year. But you have to draft somebody because last year, Aaron, they didn't draft a single running back in the draft. You have to do it this year, and you have to do it at least on day 2. I don't really want to wait until day 3 to get a running back, even though this class is, deep and you have some guys that could slip. I think you got to go Judkins here in this scenario if he slips to the second round.
Yeah, and I could see this team going with one of these Ohio State running backs. That's one of the things yeah, and you wouldn't go wrong with either one. And the other thing that would probably be a selling point, they told Jerry, like, he kind of got a little bit of Zeke in him, and he'd be like, sign me up. I'm going to go and grab me a Quinshawn Judkins or something. Like,
we like our guys, and we like to develop them and everything. So,
yeah. I think absolutely. So we got our running back. We got our corner. So we'll see if we can get in the third rounds. So we already filled our running back. We got Cameron Williams, Ozzie. We got Chris Paul, who's definitely good in coverage. Or you can get that undersized edge rusher with Josiah Stewart. Or do you want to look at wide receiver or any other position?
I want to look at receiver and see what would be left in this scenario for the third round, especially if there's no wide receiver 2 that Dallas signs before this point. Nobody there that really looks too appealing, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I get you.
Maybe linebackers might be better based on what's left. Especially there's no Eric Kendricks, so.
Yeah, that's okay. So let me move the receiver also. We got Jeffrey Bossa, who can play Will, Chris Paul as well, Barry Carter, Jack Kaiser. I think he's more of a early day 3 guy. So, is there
Mm-hmm.
any of these linebackers?
Hmm. I don't think so. Maybe defensive line, like a D
Okay,
tackle or an edge rusher.
yeah, I was
That
thinking
might
that
look
too.
better at this point.
Let me see what we got. So we got. I know Deion Walker. He has the traits, but he still needs a little work. Jordan Phillips had a really good East West Shrine. Got a wrestling background that always catches my eye. I'll put edge rusher as well in here too. So, so
Mm,
third round's a little tough. I'm gonna be honest.
yeah, based on what this scenario is, yeah, looks a little different. It's actually hard for me to see the screen. What's the
Oh,
name of that Michigan guy?
Josiah Stewart. Let me see if I could zoom that in for you.
Yeah, I tried to zoom in on my end.
Let's see if I can get that going. Okay, is that a little better?
That's a little better.
Okay. Let me see.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm. Elijah Roberts might not be too bad of an idea there. The reason I say it is more so the proximity. One of the reasons I brought up uh, uh, Rashard, uh,
Smith.
Brashad Smith. Sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Oh no, you.
Um, was that he went to SMU, and that's a pipeline sometimes, especially with distance. You don't got to travel too much to look at those guys.
Yeah.
Um, and when I watched SMU last season, Roberts had some good traits to him. I do think he'd be a bit of a project, but um, I think I might go with him just to take a chance and see what you can get with it. That might be more of the risky ones of the three that we're doing, but
Yeah.
I feel like Elijah would be worth a flyer. Um, just to see, how he can develop into being a future edge rusher for you. The good
Okay.
thing is that this team does have some younger talent like Marshawn Nealon, so you wouldn't be trying to fulfill a starter spot if you go with somebody like Roberts or have the D tackle or defensive end be a day 2 or 3 selection. Uh, so yeah.
I could see that where you could add more because you can never have too much depth on the defensive line. Adding a guy like Roberts who got versatility, you may try to figure out if he's a defensive tackle. You may see if he's an edge rusher, and if he pans out to be a solid move, it's a win-win. So I'm down with
Hmm.
Elijah Roberts, and then he's just down the road from Frisco. So I think they had a close eye on these SMU guys as well. So let's see all the guys that we got, and I'll post this on after the show as well, so everybody will get to see who we drafted and see what they give us on the grade. They're usually rough on here.
Yeah.
They, oh, I don't care about that. Let me see. Oh, okay, they're actually pretty nice.
Oh, I'm surprised that they gave Elijah Roberts pick a B plus.
Yeah,
Um, I
yeah,
mean, I don't really know how strong of a combine he had, but maybe that influenced. I don't know. I don't know if that's even factored into these selections.
yeah. I gotta. Yeah, they're interesting. Is like certain players, it could be like a top player, and they'll give you F because I don't know, maybe they met him somewhere and they gave him attitude or something like that. You know what? F on PFF when I get home for this
Yeah.
guy because I don't know the reasoning when it comes to their grades, but they're pretty interesting for sure.
Yeah, Judkins being a C plus. I mean, I
That's
guess
fine.
I'll take the C plus just because I want to pass the test, which I guess we did in this situation.
Yeah,
But come on, at least put a B minus on there or something for that. I mean, we've likely just drafted our starter with that pick if
yeah,
we go second round with the running back.
yeah. That was the most disrespectful one. The surprise one was I didn't even think they were going to give us a good grade on Elijah Robert. I seen a little bit of film. I like what I saw. So, but they gave us a B plus. They loved the Jade Barron pickup. So I like this draft. We filled needs, and then we got depth as well. So that's a big plus for this. But let me. But I appreciate you for being on the show, Maitland. Before I let you go, for people that want to be like photojournalists or journalists in general, what would be your advice to them?
Well, to be a photojournalist or a news photographer, the term is basically the same. Some people have different, ways they want to say it. But one thing I want to say is that just be willing to start small and be willing to do lower scale jobs in the business, like whether it's starting out as a production assistant or maybe you're just a video editor or something like that. And then if you get an opportunity based on whatever scenario you could be in, to pick up a camera and just get used to it and start shooting some video of your own. That could lead to big things. That happened with me in my first television market stop, and it's led to me having a success of being a photojournalist, photographer here in the Corpus Christi area.
Yeah, and like you said, always it's not nothing wrong starting small. Like you said, you got to start from somewhere to build up your resume and stuff. So I think that's definitely some great advice. But before I let you go, where can they follow you and check out all your content you got going?
Well, if y'all want to follow me on Twitter, my Twitter username is at Maitland. That's M is capitalized, and then it's actually 2 underscores and then R for my last name, Rutledge. That's where you can follow me on Twitter, X, and on Instagram. You can follow me at Maitland Rutledge, all one word, all one username.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Maitland, for being on the show. We'll be back next week, or if there's some big news going in Dallas Cowboy world, and possibly will, because the Cowboys will keep the Cowboy fans busy of good things or bad things. Hopefully, this year is all positivity. But y'all have a good one. Peace.